Dataless, April here. Welcome to another Learn with Experts live stream. In this series, I invite folks to deep dive into a particular feature or concept while giving you the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. This channel is all about helping you be the best Appian developer that you can be, so make sure you subscribe to never miss videos or live streams. We also have a very special announcement at the end of the stream, so make sure you stick around to the end. Today's stream is less about a particular feature and more about a way to approach building applications. We want you to be a part of that conversation, so don't be a stranger. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout the stream so that we can answer your questions. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to bring out a couple of friends from across the pond, Dave Hillier and Michael Vanness.
Hi, April.
Hey guys. All right, some quick intros for anyone who doesn't know you. Dave, why don't we start with you? Who are you? Where are you? Why should we listen to what you say?
Thanks, April. I'm Dave Hillier. I'm in London, and I'm a principal solutions architect for Appian. I sit within the sales team. I've been within the business for 6 years now, and I basically support our solution consultants and our customers in the EMEA region. I also represent a voice for the customers back into our product and engineering teams. And thank you. I'm very excited to join for my first live stream. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully not the last. All right, Michael, what about you?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Michael Vanness. I'm on the Partner Solutions Consultant team here, also based in the London office. I've spent the last 4 years with Appian, 3 of which I've been working with customers for different implementations, both in the United States and over here. But now I'm helping our partners succeed. So looking forward to this session. I think it's really useful.
Yeah, awesome. So, all right. Let's get into it. So maximizing reusability. Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about, this mission you're on to get people to invest in reusability?
Thanks. Yeah. So over the last year, I've taken a big interest in this reusability concept, and I've tried to be a bit of a driving force behind the prioritization of some of the features like the design library and some other things still to come. I believe that reusability is so important as it allows us to actually create bigger and better things, because if we've got the freedom to reuse it again later, then we can spend a bit more time building it right in the first place. But the sad news, April, is that you do have to invest in reusability, and people have a tendency to expect it to happen for free.
So, what exactly do you mean by invest in? Is that something like business stakeholders need to pay for, or is that something like a time investment from developers? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, a bit of both. So Appian is great in that many places it gives you the ability to reuse objects, and that's kind of baked into the way you design in Appian. Like you have sub-processes and you have integrations that you can call from anywhere, and you can create interfaces out of other interfaces. But if you add a little bit of extra 10 or 20% of effort into a single parts design, it can mean that next time it would be basically free to redeliver the same functionality against a different data source. And this is really what Dataless design is really all about. It exploits Appian's core nature to let you loosely couple the functionality and user experience with your data fabric or any data source.
All right, Dave, it feels like so often we have all these new terms around data, right? And we're talking about data fabric, talking about all these things. So now you're telling me there's a new term I have to think about, dataless design. What did you make this up? What does that mean?
Yeah, I made this one up, I'm afraid. So dataless design is my name for it rather than an Appian term. And it's basically the documentation of our best practice of how to build component interfaces in a very specific way so that it is loosely coupled with the data. What this basically means is that when you build this way, your application will depend on the component that you're using, but that interface component will not have a precedent relationship with your application. So it means it's much simpler to use elsewhere and to be able to pull out and share with others even. And it turns out this is actually really easy to do. And in its simplest form, basically what you're doing is you're using the rule inputs to pass in a data object and tell the component which fields it needs to know about within that data object. So it means that at design time, you're not creating that firm link.
Okay.
Now,
So-
Appian's, sorry.
No. Go ahead, Dave. Finish.
Okay, I was just saying, Appian's data fabric actually really helps you here as well, because you can now design a component that can actually both query and write back to a record that it didn't know about when the component was created. So that means that even the same interface can be reading and writing to two different record types without you having to duplicate the component and just using it in different places within the platform. Cool.
Yeah. So it sounds good, and I can kind of like visualize what you're saying. I know a lot of these terms you're saying, but I'm really like a visual, like hands-on person. So what are we going to do today?
Yeah, so this still blows my mind every time I actually do it this way, the freedom it gives you. But it is a big technical topic with a lot of complexity. So today we're going to keep it quite simple, and we're going to tease you with the basics. But the details are documented, and we'll be able to share that as well. But for now, let's have a look at our example application, and we'll start walking through converting a piece of an existing application into a Dataless component that we can reuse.
Cool. Michael, why don't you tell us what we're looking at here and maybe set the stage for what we're trying to do?
Yeah, so this application that I've been setting up is just for a university landing page. So you're coming here, you're getting the information that's pressing for you, and it's all in one spot, right? So I can see my homepage, I can look at my scheduler in an academic. So this is something that I built out using the data from the underlying systems to pull back that class schedule. Also, I can look at the different events. So luckily for me, my campus sends out a PDF document, which I've just uploaded here in a document viewer, and see all the current events coming up in the system. So it's basically just that. Yeah, April, go for it.
No, I was going to say it's a little jarring to go from that academics tab, which is pretty beautiful, to the events tab, which not as much. And, I'm sure they use this PDF because they print it to put on bulletin boards or something. But I feel like since we already have a beautiful schedule, why can't we just reuse that, right? So that's what we're going to do today, right? Figure out how to make this into a Dataless component versus a specific class schedule.
Well, hopefully Dave shows me how to walk through that.
Exactly. So let's jump into the design mode, and let's drill down into that interface and have a look at how that schedule is working and how it's connected to the data currently.
So I think I put this 2 levels down, but I'll open it up.
Yeah, dig down.
Here's my schedule.
Okay. Cool. So there's our functionality there. We can see the for each in the middle. So one of the things I talked about was precedents and dependence on these things. So let's have a quick look at the precedents of this. If we try to use this as a component currently, if we try to pull this interface out and use it somewhere else, it's got this connection to the record type. So to this class schedule record, and that record has interconnections into department and location and other things as well. So if we tried to take this somewhere else, we'd quickly find that we're bringing a lot of other assets with us, and those records will have their own dependencies and precedents to worry about. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this out so that we don't have this kind of connection to our application.
Can I just say that I always get confused with dependence and precedents. So when they made it so you could quickly switch between, this was like the best thing to ever happen to me,
So good.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, let's continue on.
Okay, so let's dive into the expression and find that for each loop. You can navigate down to it.
Awesome. I'll just click on it, make it easier for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I gotta click on the right one though.
That's another new feature. If you haven't noticed, being able to click on something and it'll take you right there in the code. Pretty fancy.
So if we have a look in this for each, we'll see that it's iterating over our classes data at the side, and we'll see that we've got those record pill references to the data. So those are the pieces of the puzzle that's creating those connections to the record that we want to remove. So if you collapse that for each for me, Michael, and wrap it in a local variables, we're going to put it somewhere and create ourselves a space to move those references out of the core functionality of the block. So if you pick on the first one that you can find, I think it was a start date time. Yeah, if you grab that out and move that up to a local variable called start time.
Okay.
And there's only, I think there's about 4 or 5 of these, so it shouldn't be too tedious to watch Michael typing.
Yeah, well, it's not the best typing, so we'll make it work though.
I can test, yeah.
You know, it's okay, because even though I probably can type faster than you, Michael,
Sure.
you know, once you get on sharing your screen, it's a whole different ball game. And then I just really can't do it. I make a lot of mistakes. So being slow and steady is probably better for presentations.
I call it performance typing anxiety.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're getting there. We're 50% done, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting there. So one of the things that we're going to take advantage of as we build this out is how Appian works, and there's quite this interesting sense of inception on Appian. As you get to know it better, kind of comes to life. The fact that the Appian design experience is actually built using Sail itself, so kind of using Appian to build Appian, and that gives us all sorts of opportunities to take advantage of how it works to build our own components, which is quite exciting.
Awesome. Well, I think I'm done here for you. So now
Nice.
what's this mean? What did I just do?
Great. Okay. So basically now those references are outside of this object. Let's grab that for each. If you collapse the for each, and what we'll do is we'll push that into a new interface.
Sounds good. So just highlight this here.
Yeah, and then the magic button will let save that expression elsewhere. So what we're going to do here is I'll let you choose interface and give it a name and a description.
Okay.
Descriptions are really important when you're focusing on reusability, and that will apply to the rule input descriptions as well. So part of that 10-20% extra time is making sure that someone can use it again and that they can understand how it's going to work in the future. So we'll do that description and name, and then what we'll do is we'll rename these rule inputs so that it's generic for data rather than classes, because it's going to be something different. And now all of these data items are going to be fields, so they're references to the field rather than the start time itself. So we'll rename all of those, and we'll set them all to any type as well. And this is a piece that I love about Appian, is that the rule inputs can be far more powerful than most people imagine. That you can do a lot of stuff here. You can pass in whole interfaces and references to expressions through an any type rule input. So it gives you a lot of flexibility how you assemble interfaces. And what we're going to use them for today is passing in the whole data object, which we don't know about what the data type is in advance, so it needs to be an any type. And the fields are going to be either string references or record references to the field names within that data.
So Dave, I see that this is in my application here itself. What does that matter if I'm in that application already? Am I making any changes here?
Yeah, so we'll leave it as it is today, but if you're building this to be a reusable component, you'd probably want to move it into its own application or an application of reusable objects that you're maintaining separately. This also helps how it will show up in the in the design library when we publish it, and that's the next piece of the puzzle there. You can see the checkbox. So if we tick that and say let's include it in our design library, and we can give it a friendly name, so we know what it is later.
One note about that design library button, if you haven't had the chance to look at that yet, is there is a specific security group. So not everyone by default is able to add things to the design library, which helps us with governance and everything like that. So, I mean, just from that perspective, Dave, do you have any tips on the design library, what we should and shouldn't include? Like, because I can imagine it can get unruly really quickly. I don't know if anyone in the chat has used Design Library yet and experienced that.
Yeah, there's a few quirks with it. For example, if you bring in a reusable interface into all of the apps where you're using it, rather than keeping it just in the common components application, then you can end up with the same one showing up multiple times in your palette. So it's generally good to move them out into their own into an application. It's like a category for those type of components, and then deploy that application and not bring the interfaces into your own applications to kind of keep that tidy. In terms of what you publish, that's is a harder to define. It's more about looking at. I think there's a lot of value in looking at the program of work that you've got to do rather than the individual project, and trying to identify what has value or what might have value to you again in the future, and focus on those things.
Yeah. And people are pretty used to, or you might be familiar with this concept because a lot of people use common components that they share amongst applications. So this is kind of like a next level to that. And the other cool thing about the design library is while you're in Interface Designer, similar to patterns, you can like hover over it and see a preview of what it looks like, which is nice. Anyway, okay, where are we going next?
Let's hit save, Michael, and let's push that out into its new home. And now something quite obvious as you land on this point is that you can see that all the rule inputs, all the local variables that we specified before have been moved to rule inputs on the side. We've got a job to go in there and add a description to each of those so that people know how to use it, and that will feed through to the documentation that they see when they touch on the rule elsewhere. So that's very powerful. But you'll notice while they're all null at the moment, that we have a complete blank canvas here, so it's not showing us anything. Now that's not ideal when you drag and drop something in off of the design library. It's good to think about the null behavior of these components and put in some sort of placeholder that says either it's not configured yet or show what it might look like. You could put like a dummy view in so that you can use it for UX prototyping and things quite nicely. So that's one of the extra considerations to think about.
Yeah, so this is kind of, I can see that this is part of what you mean by investing in reusability, right? Because we're trying to get this done and show you an example in this quick live stream. So we see Michael typing, "This is important," in the descriptions, but taking that extra few minutes to really make good descriptions and take that time, that's kind of where the investment comes in, right? And where when we're planning for what to build in a sprint, maybe we make sure we're accounting for the time it takes to actually do great documentation within your rule inputs.
Yeah, exactly. And even the time of spending to identify which pieces in your backlog will be reusable and need that extra time. It has to be kind of even taken at the business level a little bit, because you want to allocate that extra time. But the advantage is you can then, when you're reusing things, you can steal back that extra time from the things you did before, perhaps.
Right. It pays dividends. Quick question before we move on that came in the chat, and because Michael's hovering over this and I see the any type. So Stefan says, this might need some careful design when all the rule inputs are of the any type, as the data type is not clear anymore. What are the recommendations? What do you recommend? Oh my goodness. What do you recommend regarding using the any type? So I think part of that is the description. Are there any other recommendations or considerations when using any type?
Well, the only thing that you can do really is that description field. There are some options depending on how flexible you want the component to be. For example, you can use record field as the data type if you are building specifically to be record centric. But the advantage of any type is that you can also pass in like an array of maps or a response, a dictionary response from an integration. So it gives you a much more flexibility using the any type. But yeah, that guidance as to what to put in it is key.
For display names, say, like, if we can assume that's always text, can we make it a text field, or do you think
So
part
the
of
thing
this
is, it's not the display name; it's the field that will contain the display name.
Yes.
So that's the big difference. Why we renamed it field. It is going to be either a string representation of the field name in the map, or a dotted record reference.
Yeah,
let's see. We'll add this up in a minute, and we can talk about it and when we actually start to use it.
Sure. Yeah, let's keep going. In the chat, if you have any other questions, throw them in. But yeah, let's keep going with the demo.
Yeah, so let's save this and let's check those precedents again, because actually this is the turning point for this component, right? And this is what we've been attempting to achieve. So already we've solved it, right, to a degree, right? The links to the records are no longer there. We've still got a constant and a folder. You're always going to have some pieces, like it's always going to have the folder it belongs to. One of the big concepts here that I talked to in the documentation that I made is theming theme objects, and we'll look at another example of this at the end. But we could change that constant reference to be using a theme configuration as well if we want to make it more flexible. But we'll come back to a specific example of that later. So let's close this and let's give it a test out.
All right, so should we go test it with that PDF scheduler, you think?
Yeah, let's jump back into that, into our home dashboard, and yeah, let's update this events tab.
All right, let's hop into it.
You know, Michael, you were saying you were building this thing, but I saw a lot of last edited by Elizabeth Barbietto on there.
It's important to give credit where credit's due as a team lead to say that everyone else is putting a lot of hard work into it.
Group effort. We have great people behind the scenes as well, not just our beautiful talent on here on the stream.
Yeah, so let's delete that document viewer. Let's remove that. We don't want that old view. We want our new view in here. And we'll go to our design library. And you'll see now the thing we just published. And that one's open because it's in our app. So I don't know if you noticed on the side how before we dragged this in, there was actually a local variable that was querying the data. So we do have the data kind of already pulled into this interface just to make it nice and easy. So Michael, if you switch all of these to expression and connect it to the data.
Okay.
So you can just click OK and go into expression mode if you prefer. This is the kind of default config dialog, and it can actually let you load the default test values through, so that you can very quickly try these things out. Okay, so here we're going to this local events data that we're pulling in is of the event record type. So we're now going to choose the start time field in that event record. Okay, great. And now we'll do the end time.
Maybe I'll copy this time, huh?
Yeah. The display name, which is going to be name, yeah. And we've got a location as well. Yeah, cool. Okay, so as I said, these could also, if it wasn't a record type that we're returning at the top, then these could just be text strings pointing to just say like start time, if that was what the field was called. Okay, so hit OK, and now it should load our new data structure.
Dave, would this also work if I was doing something in an older application that had, say I was querying a CDT and bring it back in that way? Maybe I'll specify it there.
Yeah, let's see. It worked with CDTs as well.
Ooh, nice.
So now we have the same component displaying data from two different record types. So this is a whole new level of reusability that you don't get from the traditional way of designing in Appian. And this is where the value really starts to pay off.
And it's much prettier than the PDF.
Yeah, it looks a lot better. I'll make sure my devs to up their game next time and really start to hone in on this.
Yeah, one of the other things I really like to do when you're building these components is to make them closer to real Appian components. Is you can also add two other rule input types. You've got the save into and value parameters. So you can use a rule input of type list of saves. So then you can add functionality, like, for example, if you clicked on one of these class schedules, you could have it tell the parent interface what was clicked and pass that schedule item back up. So that would allow you to do other things on this. So as a designer, I could then capture the fact that you clicked on that in this component, and I don't know, show a drill down or show something else on the side panel that you some more details. So it makes it very easy to create this, have an interactivity between it and do other things. So before we finish, we'll have a look at one of the Dataless components that I've built as a starter kit, which is available on the app market now. If we take the comments one, I just want to show a slightly different example of Dataless component. And you can just click OK on this one. We're not going to configure it.
Much better descriptions there than this is important, and good description.
Some knowledge too, I see.
Yeah, so you can see the previews there as you hover over it, and that's because they're null safe, right? So if you look at the what we just dragged on, we didn't configure anything, and it looks like case notes, and it's telling you that you haven't provided the information to make it work. And this is a slightly different type of one in that it's designed to work with records, and it's designed to query and do the writing back for you. So if you actually drill down into this Dataless component, I just want to show you how it works actually. So if we switch to expression mode and have a look just at the query that's happening at the top. So you can see we've got a query record type here that's loading the data. There's a bit of null handling first, but what's happening here is the record type and the fields that it's querying are all being passed in from the rule inputs. So when I designed this, I have no idea where your comments are going to be stored or where they're coming from. There's an assumption in this one that it is a modern record, and you're something in your data fabric, and you're telling me when you use it, this is my record type and these are my record fields, and then it does the querying for you. And down the bottom, we don't probably too hard to find now, but there's a write records function as well, which writes this back to
somewhere down there.
Yeah, so you can do the same. You can persist the data back to the data type without knowing where you're writing it to, which is really cool. So one last thing then, if you go back up a level to where we drag the component in, and if you could paste us a theme in there, please, Michael.
Okay.
So one of the things that I discovered as I was building these is that I was building for reusability across multiple partners, multiple projects, multiple customers, and there was this need for things to look like your brand guidelines, right? So it was really crazy to try and move every configuration that you have within a component like this to a rule input, because it would just be too much for you to ever configure. So I came up with this concept of a theme where I map all of the different things that you can configure in Appian, and these are all the standard Appian kind of pieces of the puzzle. Some of them I've named a bit more descriptively, but you can see I've just taken the documentation from the actual underlying types, and now I'll give you a way of creating, first of all, this rule, this theme config creates a default configuration when you paste it in, and you can just override individual parameters in this to make changes to it to adjust the style. So it becomes a very powerful way of making the components super flexible. Now, this is another place where a lot of the effort goes, right? If you have to change everywhere you set a color or you set a style, you're now doing a local theme dot and then padding for example. But that's only really necessary if you're building for a scenario where you might want to reuse it across different brands. If you're doing this within a single customer, or just internally in yourself as a customer, then you've probably got set style guidelines and you can just build that statically. But if you want to add it to the community, or you want to, if you're a partner and you want to have a library of these that you can deploy to different customers to improve your delivery speeds, then you can build this with the theme styles. So you can almost like applying a style sheet to them to change how they look and feel.
Yeah, awesome. You've really you could tell you put a lot of effort into this, Dave, but now you have this for all of your presentations ready to go and to also use. So that's pretty cool. But that is can be an intimidating list of rule inputs and descriptions. And even I noticed you had some really detailed comments within the code in one of them. But before we move on, we did get a couple of questions in the chat that I'll ask. And then also, if anyone else has questions, feel free to drop them in. And remember, I have a special announcement at the end, so make sure you stick around. So RM asked, in the past, the reusability was solved by interfaces, which were reused by rule bang in another one. What's the benefit in comparison with these components? Searching them independent from an application. So I think what he might mean by that is the difference between pulling into the design library or doing rule bang. And it's actually the same thing. It's similar to switching from design to expression mode, right? Where you can drag something in and then switch to expression and see it there, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I mean, you can still type, you could still come directly in. If you like to be in expression mode, there's no reason why you can't just come in and call the rules like you're used to doing. That's fine. The downside of when you're in here is that the discoverability is more limited. You have to kind of know what's there, or you have to know the prefix to use for your reusable components, which is easy enough to do if you're setting that kind of standard. In this case, Dataless brings me back all the list of different things that you can use from my libraries. But the design library is a little bit easier for newer designers to discover what your organization has that's reusable, and just browse through it and hover over it and see those previews. So it's a bit of an accessibility thing in terms of the design library itself. And of course, the Dataless stuff is just about decoupling it from the data to make it more widely reusable.
Yeah. And I think another benefit too, which you kind of touched on in the beginning, was if you're doing a demo, it's going to be a lot more impressive if you're dragging things over and they're coming to life in front of you. If you're just doing the build on your own and actually trying to, get some tickets done, then sure, do the way it's fastest for you. But also, we mentioned this in the last stream, but we love to make you look like a genius to the business stakeholders by being able to very quickly pull things over and impress non-Appian developers. So cool. Let's see, another couple.
And just to touch on that a little bit too,
Go ahead, Michael.
To that point, when you're doing everything in the Dataless version, you're no longer stuck with all these dependencies when you're dragging around. So if you have a business stakeholder on one of your demo calls that says, I wish the comments were at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and you're using these compartmentalized components, it's a lot easier to drag it down and move it in real time and really get that business feedback.
For sure. And Michael, I trust you a lot because you have the experience of actually being a consultant, working for customers, dealing with actually building the project, and now you're in sales.
Trust me over Dave all day. Yeah.
All right, another question. How did you go from the PDF to the data? I thought the whole problem of this events tab was being a document, was that you only having the PDF copy available. So thank you, Milos, for this question. So for the purpose of this demonstration, since we're doing a quick live stream, we did have the data preloaded already, but you can use some Appian functionality to extract things from documents, right? AI skill. We had an AI skill live stream a couple live streams ago, so you can go check that out. But there are ways to build out being able to extract things from a PDF, but for the purpose of the live stream, we already had the data in. Okay, next question. Are these components in the design library reusable in other apps in the environment as well? Dave, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. That's the point, right? There's if you build a comments functionality the traditional way, I would say how most people would build it, you would have a single record type behind it, like a comments record. And if you wanted to use that in different applications, you've got to either rebuild it against a new record type, or you have to share that record with two different apps, and you've got data mingling between. And you might have good reasons for not wanting that data to be in the same underlying table from two different places or two different departments, even if on the front end it wouldn't really show. So this gives you that ability to use and maintain the same component, and but have it running and working against different record sources.
Yeah. The whole point of all of this, and Dave's catchphrase that he tells everyone every day: invest in reusability. So whatever we can do to make it the most reusable, that's really the goal. We have a lot of great questions in the chat and great comments. So thanks everyone for writing in. So people love the theme idea. Great idea. Very true. So Andrew asks, in this design pattern, do you have to manual sync the record types when deploying changes?
So in this, that's not really relevant to these design patterns. I don't think there's nothing really to do with the record itself. That's you're not making any changes to the record to build these.
Yeah. So Dataless design, Dave's other catchphrase, Dataless Dave over here. We had another question, which is just how to add our own font in Appian. And actually, we have the winner of this year's live build challenge who answered that. You can do custom typefaces. And Molly, that was part of what helped her win the live build challenge, was because in that 1 hour challenge, she actually also changed the typeface. And everyone was just so impressed that in that time crunch, she still was able to do that.
April, I think Molly could type faster than I can, or you think it'd be close?
You know, I don't know how you would do on the live build challenge stage, Michael, but
okay.
we do also have the recording of that on the channel, as well as you can go to community.appian.com/challenges and download the challenge and the data if you want to try it for yourself. So a lot of things to help you with your development. Okay, more questions. Okay. Can this approach be worked if the record type has a relationship with one or more tables?
Yeah, you can follow relationships. So, for example, in the two different styles that we were using it in the original one, the what was it? The class schedule. It's the location is actually across a relationship. So you can see that it's going class.location.value to supply that location. It's traversing that relationship. Whereas in the events one, it's not. The location is part of the flat. It's a flatter data structure. So yeah, this doesn't really care particularly about how the record is configured. It just only cares about the fields that it knows about, and you telling it how to access those.
Yeah, data lists for sure. Yeah, I know it can be a little bit to wrap your head around, but that's the point of setting up the rule inputs in such a way that whether it's a record field, a key within a map, you can make it work, right, Dave?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I'll give another chance if anyone's going to pop any more questions into the chat. But Michael, as someone that has been evangelized to by Dave for this concept, what has your experience been like trying to adopt it and think about going from how you used to do Appian builds to this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think all those questions that were coming up in the chat were some that were going through my head the first time I saw it. It's really tough to really conceptualize getting away from the data getting away from just pulling it in every time you're doing it, hard coding it into what you have, and then utilizing it. But the more and more you start to use this and see the other ways that Dave has configured these examples that he's so kindly given to all of us, the more you can imagine different ways this can be used. And as you get into more and more complex ideas, just really exemplifies and kind of expands the frame of what you can do these dataless designs. And it brings everything to life. And then to the point we talked about at the beginning, it makes mocking up and switching things over so much easier. So really, not only does it take some time to get used to and wrap your mind around, but once you do, it just is a huge, huge help.
Yeah.
So I'm sharing some more videos as well. It's linked to from the App Market building block. I've done some videos to support using the kind of starter kit that I've put together. And there's ones on there like UX prototyping and theming, which show like how you can use these to kind of to quickly build out something to if you've got some stakeholders to show what an app might look like, and then adjust the theme kind of live to have it them all adapt. So there's some more videos to kind of help you understand the possibilities with these things.
Awesome. Yeah. I think we're good on that. This was a really great introduction, and also showing, how easy it is to reconfigure your applications to be able to, or your objects to be able to go to this approach. So thank you so much, Dave and Michael. I did say I have a special announcement. What do you guys say we test the audience a little bit? So I'm very excited to announce that we're launching our first Appian community quick build, and we're inviting you to participate. The goal of these quick builds is to give you a chance to practice what you learned and show off your creativity. So the first challenge, a reusable calendar component like the one we showed you today. Use the dataless design approach that we discussed and create the best calendar component that can be seamlessly used across various applications. Every person that submits a project will be entered for a chance to win either 3 days of advanced training or one of 5 available certification vouchers if you're looking to level up your certification. And then the top submissions will be invited to join us during our live stream on Friday, August 11th. And during the live stream, we will feature the best submissions and then give them a chance to face off for 2 prizes. First place, a $250 gift card, and second place, a $100 gift card. So head over to youtube.appianportals.com/quick-builds. We'll throw that in the chat or in the description, in the comments, and register to learn more. You'll have until August 4th to submit your projects. We cannot wait to see what you build. So Dave, Michael, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your knowledge with the audience. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for joining and engaging with each other and asking your questions. And if you enjoyed the stream, please hit that like button to let us know. If you have more questions or ideas for future streams, drop a comment or head over to the Appian community discussion boards. Remember, our next stream will be on Friday, August 11th, where the finalists will face off to determine the winners. I'm excited to see who will be joining me for that. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, April. Cheers.
Thanks, April.
Cheers.
Bye.